Exposed, 12 spine-chilling CCTV clips of sinister hidden figures in haunted locations. Sarah's pulse raced, tension prickling her skin like static. She'd seen something, or rather, someone, lurking on her security footage. Crouched figures, cloaked in darkness, weaving through the quiet streets of Maplewood, slipping between homes like whispers. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest as flickering lights outside sent shadows hopping across her living room. The perfect suburban facade cracked before her eyes, revealing a nightmare lurking beneath. "Emily. Chloe. Stay close," she called, forcing a steady voice that her daughters couldn't sense was shaking. Each creak of the floorboards echoed in the heavy silence, haunting her thoughts. What was happening? Those voyeuristic shadows haunted her mind, and when night fell, sleep would flee. Instead, the shadows crawled, knotting around her heart with icy fingers. Night after night, Sarah combed through the CCTV footage, eyes glued to the screen. The calm of her modest home shattered with chilling discoveries. Dark shapes flitted across frames, arms crossed, faces obscured, eyes glinting like daggers. They moved closer, inching toward her sanctuary. One clip showed them hovering above her neighboring homes, pausing beside children's beds, a sickening tableau that made bile rise in her throat. Each time, her breaths quickened, and doubt escalated. Were they here for her? For her girls? And then came the whispers. At first, they were quiet, a low hum that might have been the wind. But soon they twisted into distinct sounds, muffled voices just out of reach, tugging at her sanity, igniting her worst fear. Visions of a terrible past loomed over her, spectral shadows of an abusive relationship from which she thought she'd escaped. What if it was a part of her past clawing back, crawling through her new life? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Steeling herself, Sarah marched to the local police station, her resolve growing. There are figures in the neighborhood, she insisted, her voice trembling with urgency. But the officers exchanged casual glances, shaking their heads. It's just Maplewood's nightlife, ma'am, one said, pretending to stifle laughter. The dismissiveness ignited a fire in her, a need to understand, to protect her daughters from whatever malevolence was stalking them. Were they in on it? What lay hidden under the perfect surface of her suburb? Returning home, dread washed over her as she stepped inside, an uneasy feeling wrapped around her like a heavy veil. She gulped, fingers twitching, and replayed the footage once more. Each clip grew darker, the figures seemed more aware, more intent. Then came the moment that froze her blood. A figure stood outside her window, its gaze fixed on her daughters, their innocent laughter echoing from the next room. A smirk twisted on its shadowy face, and everything inside her screamed, who will protect them now? The air felt heavy, oppressive, as Sarah stood frozen in the dim light of her living room. Fear painted her face a ghostly white, and her breath quickened in sharp, panicked gasps. She scanned the room, every corner appeared darker, more sinister. The shadows had grown arms that beckoned her, voices whispering her name in dissonant murmurs, a taunting lullaby shrouded in malice. With trembling hands, she fished her phone from her pocket. But the familiar digits seemed foreign now. Calling someone felt futile. Who would she even turn to? Maybe the police would believe her this time? But doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. How could she convince them? The haunting on her CCTV felt like a bad dream, too unreal. "Mom!" Emily called, her voice breaking through the fog of terror. A fleeting moment of relief washed over Sarah. Her daughters were here, alive and safe, but the knowledge that something lurked outside made her heart clench painfully. "Let us check the back door," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. They crept through the house, the step of the girls trailing her like restless echoes. The walls seemed to close in as they approached the back entrance. Every creak sounded more pronounced, vibrating with a chilling foreboding. As they reached the door, Sarah hesitated. What if the figures were watching them now? Stalking them from the shadows? The very thought made her stomach churn. She'd spent nights locked in the glow of the monitor, trapped in a web of fear, but she needed to act, to gather the threads of courage. On 3, she instructed, her voice barely above a whisper. She counted down, a mantra of determination. 1, 2. A loud crash interrupted her count. The sound reverberated through the house like a gunshot, and adrenaline shot through her veins. The girls gasped, their eyes wide with terror. The window. With instinct pushing her forward, Sarah threw open the back door, but what she saw made her blood run cold. Outside, only darkness lay, a shadow realm devoid of life. Then, a sudden rustle came from the right. A figure darted swiftly from her periphery, slipping behind a cluster of trees. Get inside. Now! She screamed, ushering her girls in before she followed, slamming the door shut. Their breathing filled the silence, a rough symphony of heartbeats amplified in the terror that enveloped them. Mom, what was that? Chloe's voice trembled. I don't know. The words felt hollow. Panic twisted in Sarah's gut as she peered through the kitchen window. Outside, the shadows had thickened into an inky blackness, shifting and swirling with a life of their own. There was no sign of the figure she had glimpsed, yet the feeling of being watched hung in the air like a thick fog. As if in response to her thoughts, the whispers returned, louder this time a frantic chorus. It's too late, they echoed, filling her with a sense of impending doom. With mounting dread, she turned back to the footage. Each click on the clips heightened her pulse, revealing more of the figures, their movements growing more sinister with every frame. But the last clip set her world ablaze with horror. A figure, cloaked in shades darker than the night, stood directly in front of the camera. It wore a mask of twisted silence, hollowed eyes locked onto her house. There was an unmistakable understanding. They knew she was watching. Sarah staggered back, clutching her chest. That figure wasn't just watching, he was waiting. Waiting for them. The door rattled violently, a bone-chilling sound that froze her to the core. Emily and Chloe screamed, pressing against her, their small bodies trembling. The door shook as something heavy pressed against it, and Sarah whispered a frantic prayer. She couldn't lead them to their doom. Then the whispers coalesced into a word, a familiar voice. Mom! She turned, locating her daughter's wide, terrified eyes. In that instant, it struck her, the whispers, the figures, they were part of a sick game, and she was the target. Who would protect them now? But one question surged above all the chaos. What did they want? This time. The walls of the house didn't feel safe anymore. And the darkness outside was no longer just an enemy, it was a haunting promise. The door creaked again, a slow, chilling sound that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. The girls flinched, their small hands clutching each other tighter. The rattling persisted, rhythmic now, like a heartbeat echoing through the night. It felt alive. Something pressed against it, strong, heavy, as if carrying the weight of all her worst nightmares. Mom, please, Chloe whimpered, her voice barely above a whisper, what's happening? Just stay behind me. Sarah's own voice trembled as she positioned herself protectively in front of her daughters. The pounding intensified, a harsh insistence that demanded entry. With each thud, Sarah's heart raced faster, panic clawing at her thoughts. She could feel the icy fingers of dread creeping up her spine. She couldn't let whatever was out there get inside. We can call 911. Emily suggested, her eyes wide with fear. Who's going to believe this? Sarah snapped, frustration bubbling within her. But the thought of dialing the police tugged at her, a desperate hope in a world already consumed by shadows. No. Mom. We need to get out of here. Chloe cried, but the idea of leaving their haven, even one filled with terror, felt like a betrayal. Suddenly, the door shuddered violently, splintering the wood at the base. It was only a matter of time before it gave way. Sarah darted her eyes around the living room, searching for anything they could use as a barricade. But the only pieces of furniture worth something were also the only connections to their previous life: the worn coffee table and their mother's favorite armchair. The door rattled again, crashing hard enough that Sarah felt the vibration in her teeth. Another shadow moved behind the trees, only now it seemed closer, waist-high on the grass. "Mom, I saw it." Emily pointed, her face pale. "It's outside." Chloe echoed, her small body trembling as she gaped through the narrow window. Just before Sarah could respond, the room plunged into darkness. All the lights cut out, leaving nothing but the faint glow from the streetlight filtering in through the curtains. Heart pounding, she reached for her phone, breath hitching in her throat. No signal, only the swirling chaos of dread enveloped them, an unseen snare. "Stay quiet," she urged, her voice a tense whisper. Panic mixed with adrenaline surged inside her as the rattling began anew, this time more furious, the sound twisting through the thrum of her pulse. Then, with one final violent blow, the door burst open. The hinges groaned under the strain as the shadows surged in, filling the space with a thick, suffocating presence. "Run!" Sarah screamed. She pushed her daughters toward the hallway, but as they turned, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall and imposing, its body draped in a cloak woven from shadows. Its face was obscured behind a grotesque mask, eyes wide and yawning like black holes, sucking light and hope into their void. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but a cold, paralyzing fear pinned her in place. The figure raised a hand, a silhouette framed by moonlight, as it pointed directly at her. "Mom!" Emily shrieked, her little voice cracking. Time slowed as Sarah's heart raced uncontrollably. It felt like a nightmare that would never end, a frozen moment of terror full of unspoken threats. This wasn't just about keeping her daughters safe. This was a confrontation she had never anticipated. But in the silence that followed, a shiver of realization sliced through her fear. This figure, looming before them, held something far more valuable than dread. A key, a question. What did they want from her? "Who are you?" Sarah shouted defiantly, her voice cracking under the weight of uncertainty. The figure slowly lowered its hand, tilting its head as if considering her question. The hint of a smile formed on its lips, a chilling, sinister twist. In that moment, the whispers erupted into a deafening crescendo, a cacophony of voices mingling with her own frantic thoughts. The three of them stood on the edge of a precipice, staring into the void. Then, just as quickly, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving behind the echo of its wicked laugh. "Mom?" Chloe's voice trembled. "I don't know," Sarah answered, barely able to speak. But she knew one thing: this nightmare was just beginning. Outside the house, a chilling breeze picked up, swirling dead leaves in a tempest of whispers. What awaited them in the darkness? Sarah's gut twisted with dread. The real horror was yet to come. The silence that descended upon them was deafening, a heavy blanket smothering their frantic breaths. The house felt more like a prison now, the walls closing in with the weight of unseen dread. Sarah glanced at Chloe and Emily, their faces pale, marred by confusion and fear. She wanted to reassure them, but the echo of that laugh haunted her, twisting her insides. "Stay close," she hissed, nudging them toward the back hallway. They shuffled in single file, feet dragging against the cold hardwood, each step fraught with uncertainty. Tremors rattled through the floorboards above them, a slow, deliberate moving sound that grew louder with each passing second, as if something heavy was creeping just out of sight. Panic bubbled beneath Sarah's skin. What else was in the house? "Mom!" Emily barely managed to form the word, her voice trembling like a leaf caught in a tempest. "What?" Sarah replied, her own voice sharper than she intended. "Can we go hide?" Chloe's eyes darted to the door, then back to the dim hallway ahead, as if she could see the monster lurking just beyond the light's reach. Not yet. We need to think. But what could she think about? The air around them was thick with danger and every instinct screamed to escape, yet there was nowhere safe. They could escape to the backyard, but that only opened up a vast, empty expanse filled with dread. Another thud sounded from above, reverberating through the floor. The girls jumped, clasping hands tighter, eyes wide, a reflection of their shared horror. "Mom," Chloe whispered once more, as if somehow voicing their collective dread would make it all more manageable. "Just trust me." That felt hollow. Did she even trust herself? They had retreated into the dark safety of the hall, using the shadows as a guise. Sarah could feel the anxiety coursing through her veins, twisting and turning her stomach. She pressed her back against the wall, wishing she could blend into it, wishing to melt away. It was a mental battle against a tangible threat, and she felt the burden of her failure pinning her down. Suddenly, the sound of soft padding almost like footsteps echoed from above. Sarah clenched her jaw, holding her breath. In her mind, she searched for an explanation, for a reason why this was happening, but there was none. There couldn't be. Then came the whispers again, faint but unmistakable. Words tumbled incoherently in a murmur, laced with malice, weaving through the air like a fog. They drifted from the staircase, coiling around them, enwrapping her thoughts. She could almost hear her name, or perhaps it was her daughter's. It was an invocation, a beckoning. Mom. Emily tugged gently at her sleeve. "Shoo," Sarah mouthed, her eyes focused on the faint silhouette of the stairs spiraling upward before them. Twitching shadows danced along the walls as they moved, the darkness shifting in response to their fear. Sarah felt the urge to investigate, to climb the stairs and confront whatever lingered above. But she couldn't let her daughters down. Not again. "What do you want?" Sarah screamed suddenly, her voice cutting through the chaos with fresh resolve, though inside, she felt the cracks of her sanity splitting. The house shuddered in response, a low rumble that heaved from the basement, rattling pictures off the wall. Chloe and Emily cowered, glued to their mother's side. The whispers surged, now a clamoring chorus, their words overlapping, calling her, promising things she couldn't comprehend. Like a siren song intricately tied to a fate she didn't want to face. Then, silence fell. An unnatural stillness, pregnant with anticipation. "Mom?" Chloe's voice broke through the tension, fragile like glass. Just when Sarah thought relief was within grasp, she felt a wrongness in the air. Goosebumps prickled her skin like a warning. The oppressive weight shifted, and she turned to see the doorway enveloped in darkness, the outside world swallowed whole. She knew then they were not alone. A presence loomed behind them. "We need to go. Now," Sarah declared, pulling the girls toward the back door, her heart pounding. Like war drums. As they rushed down the hallway, the whispers crescendoed into a shrill howling, a sound that threatened to rip the very fabric of her sanity. Just as they reached the door, it slammed shut before them, forcing them back into the shadows. "Mom!" Emily cried out, then the darkness came alive, swirling around them like a storm, and a low, mocking laughter began to echo. The sinister game was just getting started. What awaited them beyond the door? What horrors lingered in the dark? Whatever it was, Sarah realized with dread, they were its next targets. The air felt electric, crackling with the weight of unspeakable dread. Sarah's mind raced. The door slammed shut as if the house itself had decided to trap them, to keep them enveloped in its dark embrace. Behind them, shadows writhed against the walls, darting in and out of view, teasing her senses. "Mom, what's happening?" Chloe's voice trembled, now a whisper caught in the storm of their fright. "We're gonna find a way out," Sarah insisted, though her own voice wavered. She scanned the hallway, her heart thrumming hard against her chest. Every creak of the old floorboards echoed like a warning bell, each shadow seemed deeper, more sinister. The whispers rose again, a chorus of shuddering breaths, threading through the silence, growing louder until they filled her mind. A name floated up, chilling her. Sarah it twisted, entwining herself and her daughters, pulling them toward the staircase. Was it real? Or just her imagination unraveling under the pressure? No! She shouted, pressing her fingers against her ears in a futile effort to block the insidious sound. It didn't work. The whispers flowed like a river around them, slithering into her thoughts. Mom! Emily clutched her, eyes wide like saucers, reflecting the faint glimmers of the dim light overhead. The weight of the suffocating darkness compressed around them, tightening its grip. It's okay, honey. We just need to keep moving, Sarah reassured, though it felt more like a lie. The back door was still shut tight, an impenetrable iron wall. They had to escape, before whatever this was unfolded fully around them. She turned quickly, the resolve pushing her forward. We have to find another way. The girls hesitated, but they were rooted together in fear. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand tightly, guiding her along the corridor toward the nearest window at the end of the hall. They could break through. Maybe the glass would shatter their shackles, but as they rushed forward, a loud crash erupted behind them. Startled, Sarah jerked her head to see dark figures forming in the doorway, their outline pulsating and shifting as if they were more shadow than flesh. Mom! Emom! Chloe screamed, pulling away slightly. Stay together, Sarah urged, panic threading through her veins like ice. Their only option was forward. The window loomed closer, but with every hurried step, the darkness advanced, filling the space, crawling closer on the floor, almost alive. The whispers morphed into guttural growls now, and the laughter cut through the silence sharp, jagged, mocking. Just as they reached the window, the figures coalesced into solidity, an array of twisted faces, a grotesque gallery of despair etched with hunger. Shadows stretched in unnatural ways, their eyes glinting with malevolence. What do you want? Sarah shouted, pushing her daughters behind her, instinctively placing herself as their shield. The figures paused, as if momentarily taken aback. Then, they leaned in closer, whispering words that made Sarah's skin crawl. She couldn't decipher their chilling intent, but their intent was clear. They wanted her a bargain she could never stake. In the thrumming silence, Sarah felt a deep-rooted survival instinct break through her horror. We're leaving! She yelled. She took a breath, voicing the one thought boiling inside her. We're not afraid of you. That seemed to stir something, a ripple of unrest fluttered through the dark beings. They surged forward, and in that moment, the window exploded outward. Glass shards rained down like daggers, and the wind howled, surging inside the house. Out! Sarah screamed, shoving her daughters through the jagged opening, their only chance at salvation. They stumbled into the open air, falling into the yard but glancing back, expecting to see the figures advancing. Instead, the house stood eerily still, the whispers fading into the wind, leaving behind a haunting emptiness. They were free. But as Sarah turned to the girls, raw fear etching their expressions, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had not escaped the darkness. It was merely retreating, regaining strength for another round, and just then, from the shadows of the trees lining the yard, a single figure emerged, tall, clad in darkness, staring directly at them. What did it want? The game was just getting started. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as the figure lingered at the edge of the trees, its form swallowed by the darkness of night. It stood still, a mere silhouette, but she could sense its eyes drilling into her. What kind of creature watches without moving, breathing, or blinking? Mom, what's wrong? Chloe whispered, her body trembling next to Sarah. Emily squeezed her hand tighter, her knuckles white. Stay behind me, Sarah ordered, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. She could hardly believe they'd made it out of the house. The shadows might have retreated, but that didn't mean they were safe. Suddenly, the figure stepped forward, the moonlight briefly illuminating its face. It was a distorted visage, eyes sunken and hollow, with a mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. It beckoned to them with a slow, deliberate motion. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet felt glued to the ground. Why won't it go away? Emily asked, fear coating her voice. I don't know, Sarah said, trying to keep her composure. But we have to move. We can't let it catch us. Taking a deep breath, she turned toward the old, decrepit shed at the far end of the yard. It was dilapidated and overgrown with weeds, but it was a shelter, something to put between them and the figure. By the shed. Now! She urged. The girls darted toward it, and Sarah's heart sank as she looked back. The figure, unnaturally swift, was now advancing at an alarming pace, gliding across the grass like a dark mist. Faster! She urged, adrenaline burning in her veins. They reached the shed, and Sarah yanked the door open, pushing Chloe and Emily inside before slamming it shut. The door creaked ominously, but it was a barrier at least. Inside, the air was damp and smelled of rot. She scanned the room, searching for anything that could help. Old tools hung on the walls, rusting and forgotten. An old lantern sat on a rickety shelf, nearly empty but perhaps lit enough to fend off the darkness. Mom, what if it finds us? Chloe's voice was low and frightened, echoing in the confined space. It won't, Sarah lied, her heart racing. We'll wait it out. Just stay quiet. But just as her words faded, a scraping sound came from outside the shed, followed by a low, guttural growl that made her blood run cold. Mom, Emily whimpered, her small voice trembling. A blur of movement caught her eye through a crack in the shed wall. The figure was there, not far off, shifting and pulsating beneath the moonlit sky. It leaned towards the door, as if it could sense them inside. Mom, it knows we're here. Chloe gasped, wide-eyed. Keep your voices down, Sarah hissed. The creeping dread coiled around her. She could almost feel the shadows stretching toward the shed, hungry and insistent. The growl grew deeper as the figure pressed closer, the door rattling ominously under its touch. And then, it whispered. Sarah, come to me. Her name rolled off its tongue like an evil promise, slipping beneath the door and crawling into her mind. It knew her. It had called to her before. Mom, what does it want? Chloe cried softly, her eyes glistening with fear. I don't know, but I want to let it have you. Sarah declared fiercely. But the confidence behind her words felt thin, like a spider's web in a storm. Suddenly, the lantern flickered to life, casting a dim glow. Shadows danced across the walls, but it wasn't her doing. The rushed flames spiraled upward, a desperate flicker of hope. She grabbed the lantern, its glass warm against her palm, and turned to the girls. We've got to scare it away, she whispered, a plan formulating in her mind. We'll go out through the back. But her whisper faded as the door slammed open, splintering wood flying in all directions. The figure loomed large in the entrance, its true form finally revealed, eyes glowing, teeth sharp, a ghastly grin stretching impossibly wide. Playing is my favorite, it cackled, a sound that sent ice sprinting down Sarah's spine, and just like that, the darkness closed in, any chance of escape rapidly evaporating. How were they going to survive now? The game had shifted, and the rules were changing. Panic surged through Sarah as the figure filled the doorway. Its grin widened, revealing rows of glistening teeth that looked far too sharp for any living thing. The girls pressed against the back wall, eyes wide with dread. Chloe's trembling hand found Emily's, and Sarah felt her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Get back! Sarah shouted, raising the lantern in both hands, its light flickering as if it too feared the darkness. The figure took a step forward, and the air thickened, heavy with a suffocating dread. Come play, it hissed, voice low and smooth, each word laced with an eerie charm that felt like fingers curling around her throat. Get away from my girls! Sarah yelled, swinging the lantern wildly as if it could chase the nightmare away. The flames danced and crackled, illuminating the creature's grotesque face in flashes. It twitched, recoiling from the light before quickly reforming, like a mass of shadow trying to wrap itself around Sarah. The lantern's glow flickered again, and Sarah could feel the strength waning. No! You will not take them! She pushed past the panic, desperate. We need to move, girls. But as she turned, the floor creaked beneath her, and she lost her footing, stumbling back. The figure lunged sudden, swift, impossibly fast. "Mom!" Chloe screamed, but Sarah quickly righted herself, sprinting toward the back of the shed, lantern held high. The girls followed close behind, their small bodies pressed tight against each other, fear radiating between them. The back door, rusted and heavy, seemed like a cruel joke. Sarah pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Come on!" she grunted, ramming her shoulder against it. The chill from the front washed over them, shadows crawling in around the periphery. The figure let out a guttural laugh, echoing through the shed. "This game is just beginning." Panic clawed at Sarah's chest. "We have to find another way." But the lantern flickered again, and the darkness thickened, pulling at her sanity. Lines of desperate energy danced in front of her eyes. "Mom, please!" Emily cried, and her faith pierced through Sarah like an arrow. "Hold on," she responded, lunging for the old tools on the wall. She yanked a rusted shovel free, its weight heavy in her grip. "Stay back." Light flickered again. Darkness laughed, mocking her. The creature stepped closer, shadows elongating, merging with the dim light until they became indistinguishable. It seemed to feed on their fear, grow stronger with every shallow breath they took. Then, with a roar that echoed like thunder, Sarah swung the shovel toward the door. The metal clanged against the wooden barrier, sending vibrations up her arms. For a moment, she thought she saw the figure waver, unsure. "Mom?" Chloe whispered, voice quaking. "Keep us together," Sarah shouted. With a renewed determination, she swung again. Splinters flew, the door creaked, and light flickered more fiercely, casting erratic shadows. The air crackled with tension as the shape swayed. Each strike pushed them closer to an unlikely freedom. "Don't stop. Don't look back." Suddenly, the door gave way with a splintering crash, and they burst through, tumbling into the night. The cold air hit their faces, a stark contrast to the suffocating dread inside the shed. But the figure followed, a mass of shadows writhing behind them. It loomed at the threshold, sinister and unyielding. "Where will you run?" It laughed, the sound piercing the crisp night. "You can't escape what's already yours." Sarah grabbed the girls and began to sprint toward the woods beyond the yard. Each breath burned in her lungs. The lantern dimmed, flickering low. Had it run out of oil? She could hear the rustle of grass, the heavy thud of footsteps behind them, pursuing relentlessly. Adrenaline pumped through her veins. "Keep running. Don't look back," she urged, tears stinging her eyes. They plunged into the veil of trees, the shadows swallowing them whole. "What do we do, Mom?" Chloe cried, fear lacing her voice. "I don't know," Sarah shouted, heart racing. "Just don't stop." But what lay beyond the trees, and would they truly be safe from the shadows hunting them? A chilling thought hung in the air, unspoken. In the oppressive darkness, they could still hear it, the faint sound of laughter, echoing, drowning them in impending doom. How far could they run before the game caught up with them? Branches whipped against Sarah's face as they ran, sharp and unforgiving. The girls were close behind, each step a desperate attempt to escape the nightmare stalking them. The deeper they penetrated into the woods, the thicker the trees grew, their twisted trunks writhing in the darkness, almost as if alive. "What's wrong with the lantern?" Chloe cried, her voice thin, fraying at the edges. Sarah glanced at the flickering light, its bright flame struggling to pierce the encroaching gloom. Panic bubbled in her chest, they needed visibility. "It's fine, just keep moving." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she had to sound strong. As they raced onward, the laughing followed them, echoing through the forest like a taunt. "You can't hide," it called, voice slithering between the trees. Sarah could feel its breath on her neck, cold like winter's grasp. The giggles morphed into whispers, swirling around them like fog, each syllable laced with malice. She wanted to cover her ears, to drown it out, but doing so felt like inviting despair. They reached a clearing, moonlight spilling onto the forest floor, but even that didn't feel safe. Shadows leapt and danced, alive with their own sinister energy. Sarah turned, gripping the shovel tight, ready for anything. "Stay close," she shouted as they paused, hearts hammering. But it felt wrong. The silence hung heavy like a noose. A shuddering rustle came from the underbrush. "What was that?" Emily whimpered, clutching Chloe's arm tighter. "I don't know," Sarah whispered, her gut churning with dread. "Let us go back," Chloe urged, her eyes wide and glistening. "No," Sarah snapped. "We need to keep moving." But a voice whispered from just behind them, soft and persuasive. "You've come so far, why not stay?" Every hair on Sarah's body stood on end. She could feel the shadows shifting, creeping toward them again. They had lost the lantern's assurance and now stood exposed in a treacherous landscape. With wild eyes, she spun around, raising the shovel like a weapon. "Show yourself," she demanded, heart racing, breath hitching in her throat. "We're not afraid of you." The laughter crystallized into an echoing silence, the darkness folding in on itself as if considering her words. Fear wrestled with stubbornness in Sarah's mind. "Mom!" Emily gasped. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Out of the corner, a form slipped between the trees, a glimpse of something long and serpentine. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Let us go," she said. They stumbled forward again, scanning the shadows for any signs of pursuit, but the woods felt alive, pulsating with malevolence. The trees closed in tighter as they ran, forming a maze that twisted their sense of direction. "What if it's leading us somewhere?" Chloe whispered. "Then we'll face it." Sarah pushed back, though doubt gnawed at her as they ventured deeper into the unfamiliar territory. Every branch snapping underfoot sounded like a gunshot in the tense silence that surrounded them. After what felt like hours of frantic running, they stumbled upon an old hunting lodge. The structure tilted dangerously to one side, weather-beaten and covered in creeping vines. "Is anyone inside?" Emily called, scanning the darkened windows. "We don't know if we can trust it," Sarah murmured, hesitating at the threshold. "Mom!" Chloe pleaded, as a loud crack echoed from behind them. Heart racing, Sarah pushed the door open, the hinges squealing in protest. They piled inside, breathless, hope mingling with dread. Once inside, she felt an uneasy stillness. But it didn't last long. A gust of cold air swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering lantern. Now darkness enveloped them, thick and suffocating. The laughter returned, echoing eerily around the lodge, childlike and sinister. "Where are we?" Chloe's voice was barely above a whisper. A door at the far side of the room slammed shut on its own, sending vibrations through the floor. "Stay here," Sarah instructed, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approached the door, distant whispers began to drum in her ears, flooding her with confusion and dread. What secrets lay beyond this lodge? Before she turned the handle, the whispers crescendoed, summoning shadows from every corner. One shape began to separate from the mass, looming and shifting, its grin wider than ever. "Let us play," it taunted, eyes gleaming with delight. "Run!" Sarah yelled, but her voice was lost in the chaos, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. What would they face in this place of shadows, an escape or the end of their game? The darkness swallowed them whole, and panic clouded Sarah's thoughts. This isn't happening, she thought, fighting the urge to scream. But where to run? The lodge felt like a trap, shadows looming with an insatiable hunger. She needed to get the girls to safety, but the whispers intensified, a cacophony of sinister allure. "Let us play," the voice twisted through the air, caressing her ears like icy fingers. Sarah's heart thundered as she spun to face Emily and Chloe, their faces ghostly pale in the dim light. "We have to stick together," she choked out, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. "Where are we going?" Chloe's voice quivered. "Anywhere but here." Just as she said it, the floorboards creaked beneath her, and the shadows twisted into looming shapes that seemed to beckon her. Against her better judgment, she took a few steps forward, the urge to flee battling with a horrible curiosity. Think. She searched for a way to fight it. The door they had entered was a gaping maw, but behind her, the air shifted and a hatch cracked open. She had never noticed it before. Before anyone could object, Sarah darted toward it, dragging the other two along. The musty smell hit them like a wave, cloying and heavy. The stairwell spiraled down into what felt like the abyss. "We can't go down there." Emily's eyes darted around, searching for any glimmer of hope in the shrouded passage, but the laughter echoed above them, mocking their hesitation, urging them, "Come closer, it's fun down here." Without a second thought, Sarah plunged into the darkness with a single idea in her mind: escape. "We can't stay up there." As they descended, the air grew cooler, thick with disquiet. The walls whispered, and Sarah could swear they were enclosing around them. "Do you hear that?" Chloe trembled. "It's like they're talking." "Shut up," Sarah snapped. They must focus. The truth was, she didn't know what they were running from. But instinct pushed her forward. Suddenly, the grip of fear snapped into tangible reality. A howl ripped through the night, vibrating from the depths below, chilling them to their cores. Sarah's legs turned to lead, rooted in uncertainty. "We need to find a way out," she urged. "Now." They reached a fork in the stairwell, one path leading further downward into the depths, the other curving back toward the faint glow of what could be the lodge above. "We can't go down," Emily pleaded. "Then up," Sarah decided, pulling them back toward the light. No sooner did they turn when a deafening crash echoed through the halls, causing the walls to shudder and the floor to tremble. Dust fell in sickening chunks. What was that? Chloe screamed as dread bubbled inside Sarah's chest like a volcanic eruption. "Run!" she shouted, the urgency spreading through all of them like wildfire. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she sprinted back, the girls close behind. "Keep moving." The darkness clawed at them from behind, the laughter now a chaotic applause of madness. The lodge loomed above as they burst out into the open space. But as soon as they emerged, they halted in shock. The clearing had transformed. No longer a sanctuary, the forest twisted in on itself, trees recalibrating, branches curling like skeletal fingers. They were trapped in a malevolent web. The ground trembled beneath them, and shadows swirled, coalescing into grotesque forms. "Sarah!" Chloe screamed, pointing as something began to rise from the earth, a figure cloaked in tattered shadows, its face obscured. "Run!" Sarah cried again, but it felt meaningless amidst the chaos. They dashed toward the trees, not knowing where to go, but desperate to escape the malevolence boiling around them. As they plunged into the woods, Sarah realized the truth: they weren't just trying to escape. They were being hunted. And the hunt had just begun. The hunt was relentless. Sarah's chest burned with each stride as the trees closed in around them like dark sentinels. The whispers returned, echoing through the branches. "Come back," they beckoned, teasing, dancing on the edges of her consciousness. But she couldn't stop. Fear pushed her forward, propelling her and her daughters deeper into the suffocating shadows. "Mom, please!" Chloe cried out, her voice trembling. Sarah could barely process Emily's smaller hand gripping her other arm, both of her daughters grasping for security amidst the chaos. "Just hold on," Sarah urged, her own heart pounding with the impossibility of escape. The lodge was a fading memory, nothing more than a memory of fear they had left behind. There. A faint light pierced the shadowy gloom, flickering like a lighthouse in a storm. Hope ignited in Sarah's gut. They darted toward it, driven by desperation. The path narrowed, branches clawing at them like skeletal fingers, desperate to pull them backward into the darkness. Faster! She urged, feeling the soft earth give way to something more solid ahead. Finally, they burst into a clearing that opened up beneath the moonlight, revealing what looked like an old, forgotten cabin. "Mom!" Emily gasped, pointing toward the cabin, its structure tilting and worn, but its door slightly ajar as if inviting them in. The lantern flickered low in Sarah's hand, a reminder of their fragile safety. "Inside, now!" she commanded, her protective instincts sharp as they rushed through the door. It creaked ominously behind them as she pulled it shut, shutting out the shaking whispers that clung to their heels like a wraith. The cabin was dark, dust motes swirling in the air like tiny ghosts. The silence felt alive, and adrenaline crackled in the tension. "We have to find something to barricade the doors," Sarah urged, quickly scanning the dim interior. Rusted tools and decayed furniture littered the room, all remnants of forgotten lives and lost moments. The walls seemed to absorb the shadows around them, eager for the darkness creeping in. "We should have never came here," Chloe murmured, her face pale, eyes darting toward the windows, where shadows lingered just outside. "Mom, can they get in?" Emily whispered, fear dripping from her words. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, her chest tightening. She needed to project strength. "But we'll find a way to stop them." She spotted an old, worn table. "Help me with this." They heaved it against the door, feelings of urgency swamping the air. Just as they secured the door, the sounds of pounding grew louder, echoing like a heartbeat. "They're coming!" Emily shrieked, trembling as they huddled together. Through the heavy thumping, Sarah pressed her ear against the wall, breath hitching. The whispers returned, more pleading this time, curling through her thoughts, wrapping around her mind like barbed wire. "Mom, Sarah," it was the familiar sound of her name. "Why do you resist?" "No!" she shouted, shaking her head. "Leave us alone." But the whispers swirled like a tempest. Uncertainty seeped into her resolve. What if this was all a game? What if they were meant to play? Chloe's frightened eyes met hers, pleading for reassurance. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled from somewhere beyond the door, shaking the cabin to its core. Shadows pressed against the window, fingers of darkness crawling and grasping, desperate to pull them back into the fold. "They're here!" Chloe screamed and flinched. Just then, the door splintered, powerfully shaking under the weight of something immense, relentless. Its voice found her again, barely muffled by wood. "Why hide, Sarah? Come play." With a sudden surge of courage, she set her jaw, stepping forward as the door buckled again. "We're not afraid of you," she yelled, grabbing a rusted shovel from the ground, ready to defend. "Mom! Don't!" The girls clung together, their fear palpable. Breathing deeply, Sarah readied herself. "We are stronger than you think," she shouted, bracing for impact. In a final, glorious shattering, the door split open. The figure lurked beyond, taller than life, a mass of twisting shadows, its wicked grin betraying amusement. The lantern flickered wildly, casting erratic light across its face, illuminating the swirling darkness. "What do you want?" Sarah shouted defiantly, gripping the shovel like a sword. The figure paused, sparkling with malevolence, then it took a step forward. Shadows writhed at its command, swirling and twisting in a dance of darkness. Everything it hissed, voice a haunting symphony of malice and plea. An inexplicable urge crashed into Sarah. Was it pain, regret, or anger? The dark figure loomed, but in that moment, she understood. This creature fed on fear, fed on their memories. It wasn't just hunting them, it was a manifestation of dread. The ghost of her past clawing at her present. "Enough!" she roared, trembling with fury and determination. "You don't own us." With that, she swung the shovel, the metal glinting in the dim light, and connected with a surge of strength and emotion. The impact vibrated through her, and the figure recoiled, the laughter stopping. Shadows spiraled back, writhing in torment against the light of the lantern. "Let go!" she screamed, thrusting hard, driving her will against the dark. The shadows recoiled, hissing as they faded, thrumming with the rejection of her power. The laughter twisted into a howl of rage, dissipating like fog before sun. Weakness slithered through her as the pressure lifted in the air. A moment of silence engulfed them, tangible and alive. And then, finally, the unseen weight lifted. The shadows fled, the figure vanishing into nothingness. The lantern's light glowed steady and strong, illuminating the cabin as dawn began to break beyond the trees. Light spilled into the room, breaking the grasp of night. Sarah fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Chloe and Emily rushed to her side, relief washing over their faces. "Mom, you did it!" Chloe exclaimed, tears glimmering bright. "We're safe?" Emily hesitated, searching her mother's eyes. "Yes, we're safe," Sarah whispered, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief. They clung to each other, hearts pounding in the newfound quiet. But a glimmer of something remained in Sarah's heart, a reminder that darkness can always return. Yet for now, they faced a new day, stronger together. They had fought through the shadows and emerged intact. As the sun spilled light onto the cabin's porch, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope. "Let us get home," she said, standing strong, knowing they had the courage to face whatever came next, and as they stepped out into a world warmed by light, she silently vowed to protect them at any cost, embraced by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. But remember, dear friends, darkness may return. Share this story and ensure you won't be caught unprepared next time. If you love this conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Your thoughts matter. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Support the channel and stay connected. You're a true fan, and together, we can face the shadows.